Match said, yes.
Make sure.
It's done.
So just, it should be live. I'm just checking it.
Okay.
My driveway's over here, to like 3 feet back. So I've noticed that. But he did a full service. I mean, he could. Is anyone else?
Live? All right. You're sneaking out for attendance? Okay, I'm gonna bring a meeting to order. I'm Don Berube, 135 Mill Road.
Adam Sandall, 9 Edgewood Drive.
Jess Duke, 50 Brown Hill Road.
Ben Davis, 9 Wheeler Road.
Jonathan Petrangelo, 5 Whittier Drive.
Sandy Crystal, 1 Shoreview Drive.
Tim McDaniel, Select Board Rep.
Ginger Iverson, recording secretary.
So tonight, Ben, I am gonna have you vote, just so we get the odd number. So everybody's voting. Tonight, Carrie has graciously came in and rather under the weather to get us started, and now we're gonna be on our own. All right, we're gonna move right into public hearings. First one is amendments to zoning ordinance on town warden warrant. B, to amend section 10.01D to add sections numbering and clarifying language regarding stormwater management facilities, and also to amend section 10.01E to allow maintenance of improved stormwater management facilities without requiring a wetlands protection conditional use permit. Usually Carrie's presenting this, which we did talk about this in the last meeting. We had a few changes that we had put in here, which was really, I think, this the making maintenance not applicable in couple. Does anybody on the board have any?
Yeah, it was just defining what
Just sedimentation,
sedimentation and detention facilities.
which is a
And then
stormwater
we also,
management.
yeah, numbered
Oh, yeah, we numbered them.
numbering, so it's kind of more
Tight.
clear, yeah, to read, and then, yeah, modifying the table.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
Anybody else on the board have any comments? I will open to the public if anybody came to talk about the changes. Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing.
I would make a motion to add that amendment to the town warrant.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There we go. That one is done. Okay, D, to replace Article 16 impact fee ordinance and methodology reports in its entirety. This amendment will impact a new school impact fee assessed on new residential development. Part of why we came to a second one is Carrie talked to legal counsel to make sure that we had it right, and we got the legal counsel's plus, and I don't know if we got any others.
That was it.
That was it, just making sure that the lawyers say okay, which is brings impact fee to new residential development to help pay off the bond for the repairs, the addition to the elementary school. There's a public hearing. I'll open to the public. Anybody has any comments, questions? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Let's move right along.
I'll make a motion to add that to the town warrant. Technical term.
There you go.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then that's needed to the warrant. All right, moving along, application 211-24. Jerica Properties LLC continued from 12/19/24. Site plan application for 3 contractor bay buildings of 22,000 square feet, 18,000 square feet, and 9,600 square feet respectively, and associated parking, stormwater management, and utilities infrastructure located at 1372 Route 3A.
So it looks like
They want us to
It
continue?
would request to continue.
yeah,
Yes.
it looks like they did come back with a plan that they're not gonna have any wetland buffer impacts
Yeah.
anymore with a new plan, so.
We need to, I mean, you need to take a look at this, the bond cost here. I still am confused over why they're loaming rock. Growing grass on,
Well, I think the idea is to restore what's there. If something happened, like they talk about the worst, situation, if somebody left it, what the cost would be to loam and
so
seed.
that is, so this assumes that they would, I mean, we wouldn't want them to put loam like over rock. Or certainly like a cliff. If they have a vertical face,
No.
you
I
know,
don't
like,
think
I mean, I
it's
guess,
the-
I guess.
it's the whatever, if there was
I think it would be to stabilize and,
horizontal,
Cause that's loaming and seeding the whole
site, yeah.
site where
So that's actually the lot dimensions versus what their disturbed area dimensions are?
I would guess that that would be the case,
I-
given the,
yeah, I
given
mean,
the volumes that are in there.
Yeah.
I would agree that we need to review that, but I think that
we
can
can,
be part of the discussion when they come back in, so.
I mean, I would say that it's sufficient. It's a sufficient number, but is the question is it too high?
Is it accounting
Because-
for, you don't know at what point in the project it could come, if it came to a halt, so they may have removed that rock that was once rock?
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess they clear all the
But
trees and that's it, and then you gotta,
then you gotta,
It did almost
Case
cut
scenario.
in half.
Right.
The original one, which is wild.
but, which they did request continuance.
Yes, they
so
did.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just, we did
Yeah.
want to, they did lose like 3 bays,
Yes.
Gary told me, and will no longer have any buffer impacts.
I'll make a motion to continue application 211-24 to the February 20th meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on, application 212-24, Keller Products Inc. continued from 12/19/24, site plan application to continue and expand the ongoing excavation of the property in accordance with RSA 155E located at 9 Gordon Road. I think at the same time, we're going to talk about application 411-24, Keller Products Inc. Conditional use permit application to continue and expand the ongoing excavation of the property in accordance with RSA 155E located at 9 Gordon Road. Bernie,
So, my name is Tim Bernier. I'm with Oil Dan. So I almost messed that up. Working with the applicant on this. I don't know if you remember 3 years ago, this is down off Gordon Road. It's actually Noyce Road is a little spur off Gordon Road. It's probably 100 feet long. And the property's accessed off the end of Noyce Road, which is down here through a private access that comes into the property. It's a little over 21 acres, just shy of 22 acres of property. It's had mixed use. It's down a big industrial area. It's been over the last 50 years. It's been mined and used for industrial purposes, different types. There used to be a large steel building on here. I don't know what they did. That's been removed on the abutting property. Same owner. but it's had a lot of land use. So it's in the middle of an industrial area. The whole site's been stripped. There's no topsoil left on it and hasn't been for decades. But 3 years ago, we came in and got a permit for 2-acre mining. Local builder, Jeff Knight, was looking for material locally for housing development. So we came in and we got a permit for that. The permit was for 3 years. So at the end of the 3 years, we're required to come back and renew the permit. They're very close. They have about 6 feet left in depth, but they can go, not a lot of material. So we kind of looked at it and said, well, there's not even enough material left at the value of the material. It's kind of silty material. It's fine for fill material, for sandy fill material, but it couldn't be used for concrete or septic system or anything like that. So it's not a very valuable material. Biggest advantage is that it's right now it's a huge pile of dirt that really prevents the lot from being developed. It's in the industrial zone, so would have to get moved at some point anyway. So the landowner's looking at it, the Keller Properties as well. We will either have to pay somebody to move it when we go to develop the property, or we can do it this way. So we looked at it and decided that the only way to pay for all of this was to just go ahead and get a permit to mine all of the material that is in this hillside. In this pile here. So we went ahead and did grading plans to remove that material. Now that we're over 2 acres, we need an AOT permit. So that'll probably be submitted this week. A lot of things kind of came up with that, but we kind of through all of that. So the application before you tonight is not just to renew the permit for the existing excavation, which has been taking place for the last 3 years, but to expand it to encompass the property, or not all of it, but a portion of it. Probably half of it is hill, this piece. I think it's 8 acres. So, that proposal, it's all sand. There's no runoff from the site. So pursuant to AOT regulations, we asked for a waiver for professional engineers certification because there's no runoff that leaves the site. So it's not required by DES rules. We're asking for that from you guys as well. Your regulations have gone through a change. So 3 years ago, this was a special exception. So the permit that we received 3 years ago to do the mining was in a special exception. Since that time, the town has made the planning board the regulatory authority for earth excavations. So the zoning board is off the hook. I'm sure Henry's very disappointed about that. So I don't know, you guys are familiar, but the regulatory authority that's granted the planning board is 155E. So everything that we did is in compliance with that. That's the guidelines. It's kind of like the site plan statute. So gravel pits don't fall under the site plan statute. So the legislature created 155E to regulate sand pits. So everything we did is in 100% compliance with 155E. But you really should adopt that regulations when you don't have anything else to do. So, but that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions we can go through. So essentially the way that you guys have created this is you made it a conditional use permit. So a gravel operation requires a conditional use permit. That's how you've done it. And within the conditional use permit standards, it says that to submit a site plan application with the conditional use permit, but it really should be an earth excavation permit, but we'll go with, that's how you guys have it set up now. So that's what we did. There's some criteria. It's not, the criteria you have in your conditional use permit is not 155E, but it's this group of criteria that you guys created. So we went through and just to make sure that we met those criteria, and I'd be happy to go through them with you as well.
We wanted Brutus to go the whole way through.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept application 411-24 and application 212-24 as complete.
Second.
Fair?
Aye.
Opposed? You got your application.
That-
First step down.
Do regional impact?
Sure.
I'll
Let's do
make,
that later on our yellow sheet, but if you want to do that now.
That's step 4, we're not there yet.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, does the board have any questions on this?
I have a couple of questions. So one of the comments that we got from, town staff is on the restoration bond that's on file. With $5,000. What does that cover? Is that loaming and seeding the slopes?
Yep.
So,
And then my other question was on the swales that you got that are shown on the plan.
Yep, the benches.
Yeah. Not clear where those are going, some of them. And they seem like they're really not very deep.
So those are right out of AOTs. So AOT requires benches in the canal, since 2010. So, that's actually a detail.
Oh, so it's not, they're not, well, they are kind of swales though, because they are sort of,
They don't want so AOT didn't want the water going down really large, slopes. So if you had water, we actually have more of them than required because there isn't any watershed. So there isn't a watershed. This is the top of the hill right here. And this is Audley's site, which is excavated. So there isn't a watershed coming onto this. So we didn't take that into account when we created these. So we don't need this many. But this is sand. So what AOT was concerned about and why they create this is if there's water coming onto the site and you have these really steep slopes that are sand and you have water coming over them, every 20 feet of vertical change, they wanted you to intercept that stormwater and bring it over so that it can't start getting velocity and energy and start to erode the slope. So they have us now, and this is a relatively new 2010, put these, and this also comes in with construction too. It's AOT, it applies to anything. So if you had a development that had a really big cut and they had a really steep slope like this, they'd have to put benches in, but you don't really see them anywhere but in gravel pits and sand pits. So, but the flows are really low and we don't have any water coming on the site at all from offsite. So the flows are essentially what falls on this is going to end up in that swell, and it's really never going to make it to the end because it's all sand. But it's not running down the face of the slope for 60 feet. It's getting intercepted and brought over on a 1% pitch. So it's pretty minor. If we did have runoff, if we did have runoff coming onto the site that was a significant queue, then I think I would agree with Adam. We need to worry about where this ends, but the water's never going to make it to the end because of the sand's just going to take it all.
so what is the final detail there look like? It's going to be a vegetated slope, and what is the swale?
Grass swale.
Just grass.
It's 1%.
AOT this is in front of AOT.
Is there a plan for after, when the excavation's all complete?
So essentially we're taking, so you can kind of see from these contours is that the current steep slope runs right through the middle of this lot.
Yeah.
So we're taking that steep slope that runs right through this middle of the lot and move it back. Keller also owns this parcel. There used to be an industrial business on this one that's been removed. It's now vacant. So right now I think they're just they actually own a business on this property. You can see this building here.
Yeah.
So, that's where their business is. And I think right now they're just, they waiting to see what happens and they don't need to sell it. So they're hanging on to it for maybe their expansion or future.
Yep, it's a big, vacant area right now.
Yeah,
That's surrounded by commercial.
yeah. I didn't know if there was plans.
No, there isn't any, right today, there aren't any.
So how big is the slope there?
It goes from 280 to 332 at the steepest.
I mean, area wise.
Of the slope?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I didn't,
The area is. Oh, this whole thing. So it's 100,000 square feet for everything, right? That has to be restored.
so the total acreage being disturbed for me if you were thinking about a bond. I think it's 8 acres, total area. I mean, right now, the 21 acres, it's starting to grow in with some shrubs and stuff, but you know what it looks like down
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah, it's
we're
not-
going,
it's not pretty.
anything we disturb, the slopes are all gonna be loams and seeded, anything that we disturb are gonna be,
Actually get something growing there.
we'll get something growing there. And,
Okay.
so,
So what's the, I
Yeah.
guess, what's the area that has to be loamed and seeded of that 8 acres?
8 acres. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at $5,000, it's probably not, we are gonna phase it for current use, so here's, wanted to talk to you too, about this as well, but, so the sand obviously is not hugely valuable. In the current use, this is industrial land, so the current use is pretty high. The land, the sand's really in the ground, the sand value, after everybody gets paid, the profit's like 65 cents for a yard. It's nothing. So, we're gonna just do it 2 acre, or I think 4 acres, is the first phase. So we only have to take out 4 acres from current use because the penalty is so high. If you pay $10,000, for your current use penalty and you're making 65 cents a yard on the sand, it's a lot of sand just to cover your current use penalty. So, we're gonna try it that way. It's still gonna end up taking the whole thing out of current use. The penalty will still be the same, but you won't have to pay it all on day one. Because you don't get any, so you can't take 2 acres out of current use and then swap 2 acres. So you can't say, well, I'm gonna put this 2 acres back in current use and take this 2 acres out. They go, well, so here's your current use penalty for your 2 acres. They don't let you can't swap it. So, ultimately, the full current use penalty will get paid. Just, we're trying to find a way not to pay all at once.
And how long do you think you'll be mining this out?
It took 3 years to do that, so it's just based on the volume of materials at the rate that they're going, about 20 years.
That's if the renewal allows it.
Correct.
I have an agreement. I think that will go for another 4 years. And I don't take that much out.
If it was concrete sand or something,
It don't start.
in a minute, but it's not good for that.
Pretty silty.
Your beautiful minding your phone over there, are you suggesting we should increase the?
I'm just
I
using
can see you doing
Gail's,
math.
using Gail's numbers here for 8 acres of restoring that, assuming 4 inches of topsoil would be, my numbers are right, $220,000.
We can withdraw our application.
At 65 cents a yard for sand. Yeah, so,
I mean, the $5,000 bond is not much.
no.
220,000, I think would be a little steep.
Just a little.
So one way to minimize that is try to do, we can do 5 acres at a time. Or we won't have more than 5 acres open. So therefore you don't,
We can even have that amount open.
Yeah, really, looking at the current use in phase one, we're only gonna have about 2.5 acres open in phase
So
one.
with this, where you, as you get back into this, are you at the top where some of it you're gonna get, we'll start getting some of it planted as you work your way down, or?
Right, so that's always yes. So, and everybody handles this differently as far as municipalities and how they regulate this because of the cost of bond. If somebody was to disturb an entire 8 acres and then have to restore it. So, you could say, put the condition on that we'll, only have 3 acres open at a time. And as they get, 3 acres done, essentially, what happens is, and the way it actually works out in the mine, I do a lot of these, I do a lot of mining projects, in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, but, so what would happen is as they get one end of the 3 acres done, they'll close like an acre and they'll move this way. So they'll always have 3 acres open, but as an acre of it keeps getting closed behind them. So, you can put that stipulation on, and that's how you get the bond. That's how the municipalities typically get the bond amount into something reasonable. And then, and control, make sure it doesn't get crazy and have this whole 8 acres wide open with steep slopes and nothing stabilized. I want to talk to you about the 3 years. So you guys review this every 3 years under your current regulations. That's a little bit problematic, and we're kind of hoping that we can get you to change that to 5 years. And the reason for that is the AOT. So for new pits, if you have a grandfather pit or a pit that was permitted prior to like 1999, this isn't true, but for anything permitted after 1999 that has an AOT permit, you have to do an update to AOT every 5 years. That is an existing conditions survey of the entire quarry of the mining operation, and submitted to the DOT showing that you're in compliance with your permit. So it's very expensive, between $10,000 and $20,000 to do that. You guys have it in your regulations to do it every 3 years. So you can kind of see the problem is in 3 years we do it for you, and then 2 years later we have to do it for for AOT.
Then a year later, you're gonna be back
1
in.
year later, we got to do it again for you guys. And then 4 years from then, we do it again for you guys. And then 10 years, we do it for AOT. So essentially, you're doing this, like every other year. So, and this happened in Bosquen with the quarries that we had there. And the town did agree to change that to match AOT so that it was the same. So that the landowners, the operators aren't paying for this continuously every year. But that's how you would regulate. If you did put that stipulation on it, I think just fine with that we don't open more than 3 acres at a time. And maybe we can get the bond to something a little more that the board's more comfortable with. And then we'll check that every 5 years. You're gonna get to know, okay, what's closed, what's open, and making sure that the operators are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we can make that, put notes and areas on the plan. We know where we're gonna be, where the first 3 acres are. So in the direction we're gonna be
Are
at.
we gonna want Gail to do an analysis of the bond?
I don't think so. I mean, it is. I mean, this has been a pit for.
Yeah.
25 years. It's been pretty open. It's in the middle of commercial area. And it is all sand. There's no water running through it. There's no, so.
And there's no topsoil or vegetation on the
On it
site
now,
now.
yeah.
So anything we do is gonna be an improvement, but we are making the slope steeper, so we do need to
Yeah, to restore it to what it is now is to,
leave it sand.
I do like the idea of having that 3 acre, the small area to where you have to, as you finish the spot, you'll start.
Yeah, and that fits,
covering and growing in there.
yeah, and that fits perfectly with what we're hoping to do with the current use boundary is sticking it to, I think we start out with 4 acres just because we also have to include the driveway to get there and a few other things, but that's what we're gonna have. And hopefully it's, that's gonna probably last for 4 years.
Anybody else on board got any questions for us?
Adam's redoing the calculations for that 3 acres.
Well, he's calculating. I'm gonna open this to the public. If anybody, any comments or
We need to take
interest?
Can I have somebody take Adam's calculator away?
Seeing no comment, I'll close the public hearing. And then we're back to the board. What'd you come up with over there, Adam?
3 acres would be, using Gail's numbers, if you believe their numbers are right, would be 82.5.
So with that, part of, when you're restoring it to what it was, it definitely wouldn't be 4 inches of movement. Because, I'm not positive how, when you say restoration of bringing it back to where it was, usually things are vegetated when you start it.
Right, but I think the idea is also to create something that's
So-
stable,
Yeah.
not just, if it's a bombed
Yeah.
out site, they just want to make sure
Make it
it's stable.
So AOT is gonna ask you for a closure plan with this, and like, what is that gonna look like?
Topsoil and, so what is it, 85% vegetated, green?
Yeah.
85% vegetated to be considered closed.
So on you came over what, 80?
Like 80 grand.
It's also kind of an incentive to a bond. Obviously, you don't want to call the bond, but you want the bond to be high enough to be an incentive to the person to do the work.
Yeah.
You really want them to do the work.
Yes. Yeah, we don't want to ever pull a bond. That's no fun.
So it could, it doesn't, maybe 82, I think what you're thinking is maybe $82,000, and I kind of agree, is too much of an incentive. Maybe we can get some, and $5,000 isn't enough.
Isn't
of an
enough.
incentive. So maybe we can get somewhere in between.
Somewhere around.
10 would be good.
I was thinking 50. I mean, we do.
It's a cash bond too, so.
Yeah, and a cash
Well-
bond is pretty good incentive. That's not just 2% of the cost of the bond.
What was the original property area? Because it was 5,000 before, right? So
The original is 2 acres.
2 acres. So that's what I'm thinking. But
We,
take 5,000 times 4
20,000.
to 20,000.
But yeah, you guys have to be comfortable with it because you're. So.
Yeah. I mean, it still gives you some good
And
incentive.
he didn't fall out of his chair, so.
I did with the first number.
When you start at $220,000,
It's being sales out.
That's how my wife tells me about the credit card bill. See, it's really, oh, no, really, it's only half that. Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
we want
that's
to
fine.
discuss the conditions.
Yes.
So the conditions I have is that we, 1 second here, just hold on. I'll just start listing them and we can go. So addressing the missing checklist items, receipt of other permits, the CUP and AOT, although we're doing the CUP at the same time. Let's come back to the restoration bond number. Only 3 acres open at a time. Professional stamps and signatures. Well, you wanted a waiver on that, Tim?
Just for the professional engineer, we're at, because there's no runoff from the site.
All waivers granted and conditions approved. And then the bond, that's the last remaining one.
About the 5 years.
I've heard 20, I've heard 20, I've heard 50, I've heard 80, I've
Yeah,
heard 220.
I've got, the change to match from the 3-year to the 5-year to match the AOT would be the other adjustment.
Can we also make a note, just Ginger, to consider that for the next
Discount.
review of zoning stuff?
Yeah, it's something that we need to visit.
Yeah,
Normally Carrie usually,
yeah, I don't know, can we
We-
make that change?
I'm not-
Here.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, is that's.
Yeah, well, it's not gonna make it this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a condition.
this is something we just deal with in the future, the
Right.
3 to 5 years, not on this specific one.
The checklist items, did you read all three? I know you read the state approvals, but I think there's also the maximum distance between monuments
Yeah, I saw that too.
and also at least 2 ties to the state grid coordinates with elevation.
could they request a waiver
Well, they
of
can
that
request a waiver on the monuments.
on the time period?
That's what I was saying.
Well-
Like, why wouldn't they be able to ask for a waiver from 3-year to 5-year? Even though we haven't made the change, I get that, but
Well,
Yeah.
where is the 3 years written?
It's in the conditional use permits now, so where it used to be in zoning, but it was taken out of zoning, and it's not in the current zoning. So I think it's gotta be. I don't know if it's in there. Because the reason why we're here is because under our previous approval through the old ordinance, permit was only good for 3 years. So I'm not, I don't, it said now it's regulated under the conditional use permit. And that's a question for, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I think
it's,
you guys.
it's still in there for 3 years. Yeah, it's under
page?
7.58 of the zoning, 7.16 screening standard.
What is the number?
That's,
7.16A. Let me just make sure that that's the right.
no, that's it's a different regulation. 7.14 is earth excavations.
Yeah.
Screening standards are for.
Yeah, it's separate.
Visual barriers.
Well, I'm not seeing it in here. I'm not seeing any note in there referencing a year.
This is.
It's not in there, but-
7.14, page 58.
It's like just one, it's one paragraph. Yeah.
So do we have a time limit in it? That's
Well, that's what I'm, like, if there's not one,
Under
that's
Article
why
12, yeah, it doesn't say,
there's nothing that I'm finding in there now. Maybe it was in there when they submitted it previously,
Well,
but
I actually have a copy of the 2020 zoning ordinance, which was completely gutted and removed for section 7.14. So in 2020, there was a section 3 of the earth excavation regulations that says duration of permit. And that's where the 3 years came from, and we were subject to that. So anybody that was approved, whose pit was approved under the 2020 zoning ordinance, the duration of their permit was 3 years.
it's not in there now.
But that was taken out and replaced with 7.14, which
and
I don't
then
know,
it
it is-
refers to Article 12, which
Yeah.
is,
that refers to Article 12, and site plan approval,
Which doesn't,
but also transfers the
oh,
regulatory
wait,
authority to the
Article
planning.
14, section 14.5.
that's where I was going to next.
we state in this approval is for
There-
5
There's a,
years.
well, there's a 14.05
14.05.
duration of permits and approvals, building permit,
Yeah, on
special
E,
exceptions.
it says with exception of approvals for excavation.
Yeah, that's where it got moved to. And it's 5 years.
for which the planning
From 3
board
to
may
5 years.
specify a date upon which the expiration expires, not to exceed 2 years. Pursuant to section 7.14 in RSA. Conditional use permits issued by the planning board for special exceptions and variances issued by the zoning board of adjustment shall automatically expire 2 years after the date of the approval at that time.
But if you go back up to the top of that, with the exception of approvals for excavation, which are granted for a duration of 3 to 5 years pursuant to Article 7.1.
So can we just say we grant it for 5 years?
Wait, where did you read that?
That same, it's B, special exceptions, variances, conditional use permits, the first sentence.
Where does it, yours says 3 to 5?
Are you look,
It doesn't say
is that the
Versions?
current version? Because we had the older 21, yeah, see, it's 24, it's this one. It's not there.
So they took that out. They struck that out too.
With the exception of approvals for excavation, for which the planning board may specify a date upon which the expiration expires, but says not to exceed 2 years.
That's in the site plan regulation?
No, it's in the zoning in 14.05
B,
B.
this whole thing.
14.05 is duration of permit.
So if they would ask for a waiver from that?
Didn't know if it's in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, if it's in the zoning
You
ordinance.
can't ask for waiver for that. The only thing is we could look at that and maybe next year change it, review it.
Come back for an amendment to a previously approved use permit?
I wonder why they got taken out though, especially if AOT is 5 and we had it as 3 to 5 previously. This seems odd.
Can you have a conditional use that they get the approvals, the variance from the zoning board?
No.
Oh.
Oh, you mean, for
If
the
they-
time frame?
Yeah, yeah. Like we approve it here, then they, with the condition they get the approval from the zoning board, then they can go to the zoning board, get the approval versus going to the zoning board, then coming back here.
Yeah, because in 2 years, we're not gonna even have 2 acres excavated, so can we
Right.
get a reply for 2?
We're gonna reduce the bond.
I don't know how
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah, there's no way we're gonna even put it 2 years.
Somehow you have to figure this out, because I'm the first one.
Yeah.
Come in and Otley's coming and Weaver's coming and all their other coming.
Yeah.
Gary's not
Yes,
here
we
this evening.
We have to work on that stuff.
I don't think we want
Oh,
all these
bad.
people coming in every 2 years to
Yeah.
tell us where they are on their gravel pit excavations.
Right, yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's your intent.
Yeah, it sounds like the duration
I mean-
thing was tried to catch special exceptions and variances and just sort of rolled in conditional use permits, which is kind of odd because the zoning ordinance deals with special exceptions and variances, but the planning board does conditional use permits. So why does the duration do all three? Should the planning board control the
No.
duration of a conditional use permit?
Now, the other thing it says, and I think okay. May specify date not to exceed 2 years. And it says conditional use permits issued by the planning board of special exceptions. See, this might be separate. It says automatically expire 2 years after the date of approval, if at that time the conditions of approval have not been met. Any related, the 1, 2, and 3, but I don't know whether it pertains to excavation. It's funny that that whole paragraph is one sentence.
Yeah, you know what it sounds like they're sounds like they're talking about is conditions of approval. Like, if you have conditions of approval and the conditions are not met in 2 years,
Right,
Yeah.
conditions of approval expire, not the conditional use.
right, and it says, or if any related state or local permit is outstanding, or the action authorized by the land use board has not commenced.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, now that I'm reviewing the correct version, that in parentheses, for which the planning board may specify a date upon the expiration expires.
This is not.
Not to
Not to exceed
exceed,
2
like
years.
I don't know why that is in there. Like that's what we should review with Carrie.
Right.
Should we put aside the changing of the duration? And you can just deal with it later as,
Yeah, so if you guys, so what could we do?
I mean, the board definitely seems pretty open to the 5 years.
Yeah, so, we can, I mean, the board can grant the permit to excavate. It's in the zoning ordinance, so you don't even have to specify it, it's already specified. And we could then ask, Carrie and code for a clarification. And then we can go, if they decide that that is what it means, and that's what it says, then we can go to the zoning board. And the zoning board can actually determine that that's not what it means, or they can give us relief from it. And then next year you can change that.
so the only outstanding thing is the deciding as a board on the bond number. I'm fine with 20 grand.
Yeah.
Is everyone else?
Seems a little low, but what's the justification for 20 grand again?
It's,
Only 3 acres open at a time?
and it's 4 times, they had 2 acres before, now it's 8, and it was a 5 grand bond, so we just times it by 4.
That was my logic.
Very scientific.
And the permit's only good for 2 years.
And I think part of it too is where it is, what the condition, it's sand, it's not, it's not gonna have the running water and.
Yeah.
I do think the 80 is too high. I agree that their numbers, we use their numbers, that number's too high. But I
I
don't
mean,
think
I if we went back to that other calculation, I would challenge that. Like, I will challenge that at the next, because I think those numbers are high in the engineering calculation for that loam and seed. Like that seems like astronomical numbers for what we're asking to move bonds on. So,
And I think, $20,000 is gonna make him wanna do it.
And the excavation contractors are contractors. So the bond would be like if I had to hire a contractor to come in and restore my pit, but they're the contractor. So I think it's gonna be, and then,
I mean, the other thing is they're gonna have to follow AOT. Which is gonna ask if it's gonna, that's like, to me, I think that's the difference on this is.
we do public hearing, yeah.
We did.
Did.
I'll make a motion, this does not have a regional impact.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to grant waivers for section 502M and 502N as requested.
Do they need a waiver for the distance between monuments?
Yeah.
yeah, if you want, we didn't realize.
And I'll amend it to N502T.
The site plan regs.
I'll second.
All right, so, a second, all those in favor? Opposed?
And we've done conditions of approval unless people want to add any.
Where's the restoration bond condition?
We said 20.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So just I'll restate them. So the conditions of approval are addressing the missing, now there's 2 missing checklist items. Receipt of other permits, including the CUP and AOT. Providing a restoration bond of $20,000. Commissioner stamps his signatures on the final plan. The waivers have been granted. And the other condition is only 3 acres of the lot open at any time. Those are the ones we've discussed.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So that, I'll make a motion to approve application.
Is this, what were you seconding, the conditional approval?
So there's a list of conditions.
Oh, I see, okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve application 212-24 Keller Products and application 411-24 Keller Products.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
And the finding of facts are that it's, appropriate use for the site. And that's about it. So I never know what to say on that.
It's an industrial area.
Industrial area, it's been a sand pit for
And they meet the
30
Zoning
years.
ordinance section. Yeah, and,
And we discussed the bond, which you feel is a
Good.
All right. Happy digging.
Thank you.
just a second on the, I need to.
All right, now we're gonna really move on to some stuff.
Yeah.
On to application 412-24, Stephanie Reed, wetland conditional use permit for approximately 9,890 square feet of wetland impact and 2,506 square feet of wetland buffer impact for construction of a driveway located off Blevins Drive.
So I'm Greg Reed, 5 Blevins Drive. My wife Stephanie is the owner of the properties, representing her.
Aaron Wexler, an environmental consultant, Washington, New Hampshire. Here representing the Reeds. I don't recall how many copies I gave out, but does anybody need color 11/17 of the planning?
We got black and white, so. Oops, you got them?
Pass them around.
Yes.
Yep. All right. So, as Jerry mentioned, there's an application for a driveway.
What?
This was a subdivision that was approved back in fall, it was October of 2023. And created this 10.2 acre lot at the end of Blevins Drive. It's currently undeveloped and the only access is from Blevins Drive. There's no other points of entry here. So we have about 100 feet of frontage on the road, all of which is bordered by wetland. So we are proposing a driveway to go from Blevins Drive to the upland portion of the property. So what we're proposing is it comes straight off the side of Leavenworth Drive here and go straight across. We went through, I think it's 7 or 8 different iterations of this design. We tried routing down here, which is what the Reeds and Mr. Geddes had recommended when I spoke with them initially on site. I know it looks like it's less impact because there's a little island that you hit in the middle, but it really isn't. It's actually slightly more impact than what we're proposing. We adjusted our grades on the driveway. Blevins Drive is substantially higher than the rest of the property, so we come in pretty high and then drop down to match the grades. We maintain, a high enough grade over the pipes to have enough cover for them. But, we're looking at a total crossing length of about 306 feet. We are again, as you mentioned at the beginning, 2,506 square feet of impact to the buffers, 9,890 square feet of impact to wetlands. We do have a application into DES for a standard dredge and fill application. It hasn't been reviewed yet. I actually submitted it back in December, November, somewhere in that range, but I ended up having some things going on and wasn't able to attend meetings in December. So I requested, we put on the agenda for this month, I requested an extension from DES to allow the Conservation Commission additional time to review the application and provide comments to the state so that nobody suffered for me not being able to come to a meeting. So we have 2 drain structures proposed in this crossing. The first one, we're crossing this unnamed intermittent stream. And what we've proposed here is a concrete box culvert, 20 feet long, 5 feet wide, 3 feet high. The second crossing is an 18-inch dual wall HDPE pipe, 20 feet long. Both of these crossings have been designed by Anthony Costello, PE, and the drainage calculations he provided show that these both pass a 100-year storm event. Met with the Conservation Commission on earlier this week, and one of the comments that kind of came out of that was the desire to see an additional pipe somewhere in the middle. I did talk to the engineer about this. I've looked at it myself, and there is a reason we have it spaced out like this. You can kind of see it in the contours here, and also in the profile here, where there is this slightly higher section, and it kind of directs the flows. Even though there's not a channel here, they just kind of direct in this area, and then this area drains flows here. Not to say that there isn't ever any water in the middle, just it's only going to be there during, probably if there's a rapid snow melt or a very large storm event. And that's going to be the first area that's going to dry out. So one of the things actually that also came out of that meeting is the last name, but the application that was right after us and is currently right after us. The applicant contacted me and said he's worked in other states. One of the things he's familiar with, and that it costs less than in box culvert, are corrugated metal arch pipes. And I haven't permitted any of those in New Hampshire. I've only replaced them for municipalities as they rust out. But I did look into it, and there are some pretty neat ideas as far as coatings go. And I have a request out for pricing on those. See if we can get something that's a little cheaper,
Concrete,
but
in lieu of the concrete box.
right. And what I was getting at is, another factor is trying to do this as affordably as possible. Those box culverts are very pricey for a residential driveway.
So in your experience, you've had to replace some of these corrugated ones, rusting out.
Yeah, I mean,
How many
either
concrete box ones have you replaced?
I haven't replaced any. I mean, their lifespan's pretty high. However, if you look at, again, I know they're selling stuff, but if you look at the literature, some of these aluminized coatings that they have on them, they're talking about 7,500-year lifespans. And that's pretty darn good for a residential driveway.
So this has, you have an intermittent stream, so DES, I mean, often looks at in terms of the stream and the wildlife, that the box culvert has a much bigger opening, which for some wildlife passage is more desirable.
So this is not an elliptical, it's an arch pipe. So the actual dimensions that I'm getting quoted are
Would you have the
almost
same,
identical.
same size opening?
The only difference is the top, instead of being squared off,
Mhm.
would have
Right,
that
right,
arch, but the
right.
sides are relatively straight and the bottoms are relatively straight. Essentially, they take a culvert and they actually compress.
Right, yeah,
So-
yeah, no, I've
Is it-
seen them,
Is that the stream?
yes,
I remember.
So it's,
This is the very ticky property.
yes, yeah.
yes, it is. And that stream channel is hard to find in places. Because this property, as you might remember when we were out there before, was pretty heavily impacted by a previous logging operation. And, there's a lot of old ruts, a lot of, slash and debris out there. It's pretty difficult walking out there, even in the summertime. So, I mean, that stream channel, that stream, you can follow it, but it's like stream, skidder rut, blocked by debris, and, yeah, so,
It's not real pretty out there.
no, but I think it will be eventually. I think it's getting a little better over time. So one of the things I was looking at is if we are able to get a more affordable pipe, might make it easier to add another structure there.
And what is this? Are you building a house? What's the driveway
Yeah, what's it
for?
for?
Recreational use right now. And then with the possibility that, they might want to build something in the future. The driveway is designed for, a normal driveway design so that it doesn't have to be modified in the future if somebody wants to, build a house there.
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. We are exploring the area right now, but we can't really get back there to do anything and to see what the views are like and where we would put a house. So we're kind of in the exploratory phase, but we kind of have to get back there to make that happen, to make that call. But we are leaning towards building a house right now, but it definitely recreational use in the meantime. But we're kind of at that phase where you really just can't get back there. It's even hard to walk back there. It's pretty bad. So lots of trees that are falling down. There's a lot of widowmakers and trees that are falling on trees that are falling on other trees. I don't even recommend anybody go back there, to be honest. It's not really ideal. Wouldn't be a pleasure walk, I'll put it that way. I actually busted up my ACL walking back there, so a few years ago, but.
So is the application complete? As I noticed in the notes, is this you, Sandy? No plan was provided to accurately illustrate buffer impacts?
No, that's the other project. Oh, is this?
This is in
No,
this
that's
packet.
that's this one.
Oh. Okay, just. Then maybe I filled out the form wrong.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you have the lot that's,
I
right,
think they got.
Sorry?
you have the lot that abuts us too.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some, when we were out there on site walk, there was some talk about accessing it through your first property.
Yeah. That was discussed, I think, briefly.
Yeah, pretty briefly.
This is what it should have been. I put the Conservation Commission comments on the wrong forms. I switched.
So I'll make a motion to accept the application as complete.
Those in favor?
Aye. Actually, there are some things that they need to provide to us, but I know have been provided to DES, and that is the functional assessment. Because I think that probably came in with the wetlands application, but not as part of the CUP.
I thought there was a copy provided, but I could be mistaken.
I mean, it could be that
You have it.
he's got it.
Either way, it'll, yeah, I mean, we have it for DES, so.
Yeah, so we do need to get a copy of that.
I have one quick question before we go into public. Just looking through the notes and the construction sequence and everything, trying to understand what you're looking to implement. And one of the items that's listed is installing guardrails. Can you speak to that? Like, where would you intend to put guardrails? Where the box culverts are? Or
Essentially, we try to bring this down relatively low to the grade, so we're not having excess fill. But we are proposing 2-to-1 side slopes. Not the steepest side slope, but it's the steepest that I think someone can comfortably maintain. I don't know if you ever tried to use a weed whacker on a 1-to-1 slope, but it's not fun. Typically on anything where somebody's going to be driving and we have a steep slope at the edge of it, we recommend some sort of guardrail that could be up to the owner. We don't, say it has to be installed. There's usually a note in there. It just says, this is up to the owner, but we recommend it. Sometimes that's a log placed, at the edge of the driveway, and sometimes it's a formal, guardrail. But I don't know. I never know what people are exactly going to be using their driveway for, what conditions they're going to be using them in, and my insurance company appreciates a recommendation of safety equipment. So.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so I will open this to the public. See what kind of. With this thing to the exciting planning board. Not seeing anybody, I will close the public hearing.
We need to schedule a site walk.
Yeah, that's.
Sounds dangerous.
Okay.
It is dangerous. I want to make known that I really would discourage it. As part of the owner, I don't think it's safe back there. You can get hurt, but I understand you might want to do that, but just make it known.
It's on us if we do.
What's that?
It's on us if we.
That's right.
Our
And
AC
that's the thing. And I don't want anybody getting hurt back there because it is really a mess to walk through. And even just so you can see just the slope getting from Blevins Drive is pretty steep. So yeah, just be very cautious. That's all I would say.
Do we want to schedule it tonight, or we want to do it when Carrie's around? Because I don't think you'd want to do it we won't want to do it at night.
Right, Jeff.
No,
We're gonna have
not
to
at
do it
night.
on
On a Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to
Add it all.
tentatively
16th,
schedule it for,
15th.
well, before the.
before no, okay.
Yeah.
Now, the issue is, and I didn't follow up with DES, is that right now, the Conservation Commission is supposed to provide comments by February 3rd. Because of the time frame for when they submitted the application. We did get one extension. I guess we can get another.
Technically, I mean, the way it was submitted was an agreement.
Yes, they asked
So-
you, basically, will you
Right,
allow
so So, I mean, technically, I don't think we're under the same
But
restrictions
they-
as a normal,
Yeah, but I
Full-time
was
extension,
told
but-
that it was February 3rd
right, that's February 3rd is
is
what was,
was the 40 days.
So Saturday the 1st.
But the thing
as I
is,
mentioned at the Conservation Commission meeting, if we need a little bit more time, I'm not opposed to requesting that
yeah,
at DES.
yeah, it would
But it's,
require that you request more time, because the thing is that, I mean, the 1st isn't good because the Conservation Commission needs to meet after we have the site walk to provide comment. And so
I don't
we
think we
need, you
can't.
know, well, that's what I was initially thinking is,
How far in advance does that have to be posted?
For a sidewalk?
well, I think at least a couple of days. Ginger,
I
do you
thought it
know
was-
how far in advance?
Thought it was a week. That's why I was
sidewalk gets
asking it.
posted? Well,
So
the
we can 2
sidewalk
days, so-
needs to be posted.
Oh, I think it's either 10 or 14 days. I'm not quite sure.
Right.
14
Yeah.
days usually.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that long, but anyway, I know we,
Typically, we schedule it like
Yeah.
the day before the next meeting or
Yeah.
or the
week or the weekend before.
Yeah,
I think we do that because of the posting.
Hard to see.
but we do have a meeting also.
On the 20th. On the planning board is on the 20th.
Saturday before.
Well,
We're going all the way in
once,
February.
once
That's-
again, you know,
You're going in
we're gonna
Feb-
need to see if the Conservation Commission can have the additional time to provide comment. So, you know.
I don't have any problem. requesting that.
I don't know that we have an option. Like I don't think we can't do it any earlier than the 1st. I don't think. That's back to what I was gonna suggest
Right.
proposing.
Oh, before our meeting on the 6th.
So
Does the Conservation Commission meet twice a month?
No, we meet once a month.
So your
But-
next meeting is.
But we could also, we can schedule a special meeting to be able to, well, just have a work, you know, meeting on one project.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay. Then what do you
the
think?
first, yeah, why don't we,
First of the 8th?
February 1st.
Okay.
So notice would have to be posted 2 weeks prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, so when we continue, so we can come back and.
I can't see what 2 weeks prior to that is.
2 weeks prior.
Is the 18th.
Is this Saturday?
Yeah.
Is this
Saturday the 1st.
the January
18th.
18th?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, then we'd have to get,
Posted tomorrow.
right.
If it's 14.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was the
I
10.
don't know, it might be a little tight because we have to contact them early in the morning to get it in it would get in by Saturday.
Are you saying the 8th would be better?
I think a week out might be best.
Work for you, Sandy?
With Carrie being out, I don't know if she can be out tomorrow.
Sounds like the 8th is the best option then, just to be safe.
Yeah, as long as we can have the extra time, get the extra time with DES
He
for
said,
comment.
yeah, he said that. So let's schedule it for the 8th,
And what time?
10 a.m.
Or do you guys?
12, I like
14 days.
12:30.
12:30?
O'clock. I work till noon every Saturday.
It is 14 days.
It is.
Oh, it is,
I just looked up.
For the planning board.
And then we'll make a motion
First,
to
I
continue to February 20th.
Yeah.
I'll make since we're doing the sidewalk, I'll make a motion to continue this to the February 20th planning board meeting. Does that work?
a second.
All those in favor?
Aye. What time did we settle on? For the
12:30.
Oh, just, yeah, I'll miss that, just FYI.
Is that,
I won't be able to
well,
make
is
that.
earlier better for you?
It would be. I have a basketball game in Hillsborough for with 6th grade girls. 12:45.
I'm
We
gone
can
then.
go for 10.
So you're missing at least 2.
Yeah, let's go for 10 then.
10. All right.
We'll walk February
Okay.
8th, 10 o'clock.
10.
Make it work or.
Did you vote on that motion to continue?
Yes, we
Yes.
did.
Yep.
You can
Said
bring
aye.
the maps back for
I
next
definitely
time.
voted for it.
So that way you don't have to print them
Right.
again.
Well, we can, I mean,
We'll keep
you
them.
save all the paper, like the maps. would
We'll
you?
try to say, yeah, leave the stuff here
save
so we
it.
can
Yeah.
save it.
Save it in your notes.
Yes.
Saved.
Sure, everything. Wait till it's, all right. We play around.
I think we might stall on. Let's stall on at least.
Yeah. I imagine we get some people who wanted to talk about this.
So you can this switch with the
Yes.
other one. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, application 413-24. Hotel, back in that, Family Trust, Wetland Protection Conditional Use Permit for 2,866 square feet of wetland impact and 846 square feet of wetland buffer impact for proposed residential driveway located off South Bow Road. We're also gonna talk about, application 503-24, subdivision modification of application 503-05 to remove condition 3 stating that no construction activity which requires a building permit occur beyond the limits for grading and disturbance as shown on the plan of the new lot located off of South Bow Road.
Is this the PowerPoint one?
Yes, there are a
Yeah.
couple.
Okay. Let me know when you, do you want me to put it up on the screen?
Sure, you could put the first one up.
If I get this right.
John, will you have them introduce themselves?
Yes.
All set?
Yep.
Okay. My name for the record, Patricia Panciaco. I represent Eli Larriman, trustee of the S3AK Trust. And Mr. Larriman is under contract to purchase 24.94 acre parcel that is the subject matter of these applications. It's known as tax map 27, block 3, lot 30I. Mr. Larriman and his wife are here tonight behind me. I've got John Roque, his engineer, and Tom Sokolowski, his wetland scientist, with me here also. And they're going to help me with this presentation in the area of their expertise. So, the subject property here is located in the rural zone. And I'm just going to give you a brief piece of background because there's been a little bit of confusion about this particular parcel. We got a really busy plan that was approved in 2006, and I took a little time to look behind that a bit. And what I've got in my plans here is the top one is the original plan underneath the definition. It's the Gwyneth DeJager subdivision that created these 2 lots in 1978.
Do you have an extra one of those?
And the second one is the plan, and it's upside down for a reason, so you can line up the green lines so the lot's a little bit less confusion. So the subject property, which is Lot I on the 2006 plan, is located in the rural zone. 370 feet of frontage, more or less, on South Bow Road, and as previously stated, just under 25 acres of land. We're here before the board this evening to request that the subdivision approval for the 2006 plan be briefly opened to modify the conditions, number 3 on the conditions of approval, and to request a conditional use permit to build a driveway with 3 wetland crossings through the wetland buffer area to access the large area of upland located at the north end of the property. Before reaching those items specifically, the history of the parcel requires a little bit of conversation. Slide 1 shows the existing conditions, and that's up there for those who may want to see it. The brownish pink color is the buffer area, and you've got a striped area that's a wetland in the middle. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, that's correct.
And then in the back, you've got, what's that, a buffer, the black?
The black is the 50-foot buffer adjacent to poorly drained soils, and that pink mauve color is the buffer adjacent to 75-foot buffer adjacent to very poorly drained soils.
Okay. So the photographs that are on either side of the figure showing the lot show the areas that there's a trail that actually runs through this property, and there's actually a little wooden footbridge you can see up in one of the top photos there that people have put there to go in and out of this property to reach the backland towards the rear at the north end. The proposal as to the driveway is to build the driveway in the area where the trail is already located. So getting back to those plans briefly, Lot H and Lot I were originally platted by Plan 5279, which is the top plan. That was in 1978. It shows frontage on Wood Hill Road and on South Bow Road. And this was the era before wetlands started to be flagged. If you look at the second plan in the package, you'll see that Plan 529, as I said, was approved before wetlands were marked. But even then, 5279 showed a pond on the corner lot, as well as the area that's now called Graylor Farm Pond over on Lot G. And you can see little lines where there might have been streams or whatever running through the property. After the current owner acquired the 2 lots, Lot I and Lot H, they submitted the plan in 2005 showing both of these lots. And basically what they did is a lot line adjustment. And that was why I included those definitions with these plans to explain there was no new lot created. There's always been 2 lots. The division line between the 2 of them changed. As I understand it, at that time, the hope was that he could build a home closer to the pond. But by 2005, 2005, the town had adopted its Wetlands Conservation District Ordinance. And even though the plan was recorded in 18092 in the registry, it did not create a new lot. The planning board required the applicant, however, to comply with the Bow zoning ordinance and to prove under the criteria of the ordinance that the lots were buildable. Now, under the terms of your ordinance, buildable land includes the total contiguous land of area of a lot except slopes in excess of 25%, and I'm probably telling you things you know, but for the presentation, or ledge, which is exposed or lying within 4 feet of the soil surface. Wetlands, wetland buffers are excluded, as are easements in favor of the town, and a number of other flooding areas, aquifer areas, and land with unsuitable soil that's in adequate capacity for individual sanitary sewer systems. That definition, ironically, has not changed since 2005. And that's important because on the front of the plan in 2006, you'll see right in the middle, right there, buildable area. There's a little chart there. And we're interested in Lot 30I. Lot 30I shows 17.99 acres of buildable land that does not fall into any of the exemptions in the ordinance according to this plan. So that's important here because in 2006, that land was buildable land, particularly towards the north end of the property, and it remains buildable land now. With that in mind, there are other things to consider here. And while the 1799 acres serves as a buffer to the wetlands in the area, and there is a significant wetland in the front, the areas that fall into the buffers are buildable land. And you may want to think of them as buildable land with a higher calling within a certain distance of a wetland. It serves an additional purpose. It is noteworthy that the Wetland Conservation District in 2005, as to the requirements that are shown in this chart, have remained unchanged. So when the 2006 plan was approved, a CUP application was also submitted for the proposed home the owner had hoped to build near the pond. From what I have come to learn, that driveway had 1,900 square foot wetland impacts, 26 linear foot stream impacts, and approximately 11,000 feet of buffer impact. The house location was near the pond, but there was great opposition from the abutters, and eventually it prompted the proposed home to be moved to the small swatch of upland that has direct frontage on South Bow Road, shown on the plan right along the frontage. As a consequence, Note 3 of the conditions of approval states, no construction activity requiring a building permit is allowed beyond the limits of the grading and disturbance shown on the plan of the new lot, even though it wasn't a new lot. The note adjacent to the new lot describes buffer impacts without a driveway associated with disturbance at 9,215 square feet. Now, we're here to ask that the application for the subdivision, as it's called, be reopened so that that restriction imposed as number 3 can either be amended or revised as the planning board sees fit. The reasons why we were asking for that is because that land does not accommodate a single-family home. And leaving that restriction as is leaves this land unbuildable because you cannot get a permit to do anything on any other area of this site. And that's technically a regulatory taking. And it's without basis. There was a mistake made. And to explain more about that, I'm going to let Mr. Roki take over because he has personally viewed the site.
Yeah, so I went out, I've been out to the site several times and I went out and took a look at it even again today. There's several places of ledge outcroppings right in that small triangle area off of the road. Which basically, if you look at the plan of what was proposed, they showed a septic that was basically completely in the front setback and a house sitting like in a little triangle of area. I don't know if a septic design was ever done on that, but there's obvious ledge where you'd basically have to do a raised system, right off of the edge of the road, basically, which would end up being probably higher than any sort of structure that you would try to put in. The wetlands adjacent to this are the best wetlands in the entire property, and you would be wiping out buffer right up against the best wetlands and highest functioning wetlands on the site if you try to build it right up against the road. And there's a house directly across the way. If you tried to do anything in this front area, you'd probably need a variance just to get the house in, and you would end up with two houses sitting just literally right across the road from each other, face to face. It doesn't appear like the best way of trying to do anything on this lot. And based on the ledge that I was seeing, I don't know that you really could get a septic that would meet all the regulations for where you can put a septic and actually be able to physically get high enough above the ledge to have a raised system that would work with the grading on the rest of the site.
So what about the well?
Oh, you'd have to drill a well out in almost right up against the wetland, the edge of the wetland. You'd have to go all the way out into the buffer to be able to drill a well that would be able to get far enough away from any septic that you could even try to propose on the site. And that's pushing the septic probably I think it was within like 10 feet of the front property line. And you'd have to put a well back on the back corner where it's almost up against the wetland to be able to get far enough away to have the 75-foot radius and still be on the property.
So in addition to that, and we were talking about this earlier ourselves, when the little cutout on this plan shows the impacts to the buffers, over 9,000 square feet. But more importantly, when people are allowed to build structures and homes up that close to the wetland boundary, it invites mischief. The grass clippings go in there and all kinds of things land in there because there is no buffer left to protect them. So to that extent, because of these constraints, we don't know why or what due diligence was done when that note was imposed at that time. We're asking for that to be removed and we be allowed to build a driveway to reach the acreage at the north end of the property, described on this chart as over 17 acres of upland, to build a home in that location. So to build that driveway, the driveway is proposed to be 1,200 feet long, 14 feet wide, and a gravel surface. And it's to reach the buildable area described on this 2006 plan that remains on the site. The applicant has been issued a wetland permit by DES this past December for 3 crossings with a total of 2,663 square feet of wetland impact, 203 feet of temporary impacts, and approximately 11,000 square feet of buffer impacts. the same as was proposed in the buffer in 2005. This wetland impact is just a little more than half of the amount that was approved at 93 Allen Road in 2023, which abuts this property, where there was 4,632 feet of wetland impact, 852 square feet of temporary wetland impacts, and there's no quantities at all listed on the approved plan showing how much of the buffer was impacted. So I can't speak to that. Under ENVWT 309.06 paren 21 of the DES administrative rules, a residential driveway to access a single-family home is called a minimum impact project. It's not a major project. And this driveway is proposed to follow the existing trail through the woods, through the forest, as shown in those photos. Could you go to the next one, Anya? Thank you. Oh, back one. Oh.
This one?
Yes. So that's a little closer. You can see the little footbridge, that's the little walking thing there in a couple of the photos, but you can see the pathway that's already there going through the woods. And great thought and care has been given to the design and the location of this driveway to ensure that on both sides it remains as far away from the wetland as is reasonably possible while providing safe access to reach the buildable area in the back. The 17 acres of the buildable land was buildable in 2006, and it remains buildable now. Important to remember with a conditional use permit, it's analogous to a special exception that we see in the zoning context. It is a permitted use, subject to the satisfaction of conditions listed in your ordinance. Basically, it gives the planning board the jurisdiction over the buffer area to make sure we do it right. And we don't do things without thought and without proper professional guidance to harm wetlands. Buffers are not meant to deny access or deny use, but to give you control over what's done there to protect that wetland. Now, under your ordinance, the test requires us to, the first item, it says activity and use is consistent with the purpose of the WCD. A driveway is a use that's permitted under your ordinance under section 12.02C parentheses 2 and allowed to go through the buffer by your ordinance with your supervision and approval. As a permitted use, it's subject to those conditions, and we have the burden of proving that we've done the utmost to prevent harm to the wetland. Letter B, the proposed activity minimizes the degradation or loss of wetland or wetland buffers, adverse impacts to functions and values of wetlands and wetland buffers as determined by a wetland evaluation. And with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Tom because Tom has the knowledge to be able to respond to this.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Sokolowski. I'm a certified wetland scientist certified by the state of New Hampshire. I prepared the wetland permit application that was submitted to DES and was successfully approved in December, as Pat just mentioned. As Pat mentioned too, a lot of thought went into exactly where this driveway access would go for this project, following an existing footpath that is the only real disturbance across the site. That footpath was located quite well by whoever laid it out in that it minimizes crossings of wetlands. It basically comes into the frontage off of South Bow Road, goes across a small upland island with wetlands surrounding it, crosses another wetland that actually is a connected wetland all around that small island, and hits upland that is almost continuous out to the proposed building site. There is a small finger of wetland that comes off of the large core wetland, if you remember the striped area on the plan that Pat was showing earlier. That small seepage comes close to the property line up and above there. We originally had hoped that we could avoid that third wetland impact by going up and around it, and that would have required a zoning variance that was denied by the zoning board last year because it would be within 20 feet of the property line. The owner of the property there was at the zoning board meeting and was very adamant opposed to that driveway being within 20 feet of his property line. That necessitated going with the driveway through the narrowest portion of that little wetland neck and out to that building area. So we minimized the wetland impacts to the greatest extent that we could, which is a requirement by the state for obtaining a wetland permit. And in doing so, we also tried to avoid the amount of work that could be entailed within the wetland buffer. So the layout of the wetlands on the site make it almost impossible to avoid the wetland buffer away from the crossings because they parallel the property lines in most cases. For the state wetland permit application, I also prepared a functions and values analysis of the wetlands on the site. The large majority of the wetlands are forested and mature forest vegetation, primarily red maple, exists on them. There's an intermittent stream channel that runs way up and around behind the proposed building area that connects almost up to the rear property line and outlines the buildable upland area that Pat has mentioned, which is the location where the house and septic and so forth is proposed. And essentially what we've been successful at doing is getting a state approval that we have minimized the wetland impacts to the greatest extent possible and minimized the impacts to wetlands functions and values to the extent that's possible. Those are two goals that the state requires that you have demonstrated properly. And those are generally mirrored in your conservation district rules, which I'll touch upon here. Article 10.01, your Wetlands Conservation District, Section F, starts out with a statement that in accordance with Article 10.01, Section F2 of the zoning ordinance, a conditional use permit may be issued by the planning board for the construction, repair, and or maintenance of streets, roads, and other access ways, provided that all of the following conditions are met. There are 4 conditions that are listed. The first of those is that the proposed activity or use is consistent with the purposes of the Wetland Conservation District. Essentially, we are basically looking to put in a minimal impact driveway through this area, gravel surfaced. The minimization of wetland crossings helps to protect the functions and values of those wetlands. The location, where possible, of the driveway outside of the wetland buffer also contributes to minimizing the impact both to the buffer and to the wetlands by locating it as far from the wetland as possible, allowing the buffer to perform its intended function, which is basically to keep the wetland from having impacts in the long term from the use of the driveway or whatever other use that's being proposed. The access to this area is, in our view, quite reasonable, that the location of the proposed development is the best developable land on the parcel. As Mr. Roque had mentioned, the frontage area along Southborough Road has shallow bedrock and would be a challenge to both develop, to grade, and to keep from being a very obtrusive element along the Southborough Road frontage with a house directly across the street. And our proposed layout essentially helps to not only mitigate the impact of the wetlands, to wetlands, but also to their functions and values. So what we've
I just want to add one thing to the crossings, like when we were going through the state of New Hampshire process, the crossings, the culverts were upsized and turned into arch culverts to make sure the functions and values were enhanced and clear passage and stuff like that. So the culverts are actually oversized compared to any amount of drainage that's going to go through them as well. So.
Mr. Roki had sized the culverts in accordance with the state requirements for stormwater management, allowing passage of a certain design storm. The original proposal that we had were 18-inch round culverts, which would have been adequate to pass the design storms. Fish and Game, when they reviewed this, because they have a rare species in the general vicinity, Blanding's turtle is a location that's known on the southern boundary of the town of Bow, adjacent to, I believe it's Dunbarton. And it's about 3/4 of a mile from the site. But anything within a mile in terms of a rare species hit involves New Hampshire Fish and Game. And they requested that we upsize the culverts on the property. And we've gone from that 18-inch round pipe to 30-inch oval pipes embedded approximately 6 inches into the substrate, which facilitates animal crossings underneath the road rather than going over the road. And the concern being that anything that goes over a road is liable to be hit by a car. In a driveway situation, obviously, there's much less traffic than a town road or state road or anything like that. But even so, that's what the Fish and Game Department requested, and we have complied with that. Not just on that first crossing, which is adjacent to the open pond or marsh area that is mostly on the abutting parcel, but also on the other two crossings as well, even though they're far smaller in terms of flow that might go across those second two crossings. So moving along, the second condition under the Wetlands Conservation District that needs to be met, the proposed activity minimizes the degradation to and loss of wetlands and wetlands buffers, minimizes any adverse impact to the functions values of the wetlands and the buffers as determined by an evaluation. And I've already gone over that to a large extent, but to go into the functions and values that are important out here among these wetlands, what I had done in the functions and values analysis was to separate out the different types of wetlands on the property that have their own individual characteristics and values. The first one is that open pond that's on the southwestern corner of the property, closer to the end of South Bow Road. That is a very different wetland vegetative type than the rest of the site, which is mature forest. That open area has different types of wildlife habitat value, much more in line with what traditional wetland habitat is considered to be for things such as turtles, for waterfowl, wading birds, and the like. The forested wetlands we evaluated as pretty much the same sort of overall level of functions and values. They're low-lying areas that are positioned quite well for retaining sediment, for receiving and transforming nutrients such as fertilizers, any other sorts of waste, animal waste that may get into them. They basically can take up the nutrients and sequester them into vegetation and then release them slowly when the vegetation, such as leaves falling, decompose. Stormwater and floodwater retention is another function that these wetlands have in terms of their ability to retain water and release it slowly over time rather than flushing it all up through in a quick heavy rainfall. And production export to a certain extent is present, but the vegetative production that is present in this wetland system is essentially contained because there is no permanent flowing outlet. There's minimal use of this habitat by animals that would basically consume the vegetation and take it out and deposit the remains in other areas. But Our alignment of the driveway is above that marsh, below the forested wetlands, except at those crossings, and hits those crossings at relatively high points, so that there are basically minimal areas above them that would be disturbed, and below them, the areas where the driveway culverts would be located would allow for the flow of water from the upper portions of that watershed and the wetlands to the lower portions. Groundwater discharge was also evaluated as being a highly functional aspect of these wetlands, in that the majority of the soils on the site have dense glacial till material that minimizes the amount of water that can reach the underlying aquifer and promotes sheet flow over that impervious soil layer, or bedrock in some cases, and outlets at the surface. And that's basically in the form of either springs or seepage, more likely in these instances on these wetlands. Our design of the road, of the driveway out into the site, minimizes the alteration or the potential for alteration of any of these functions. We're not putting a driveway through the lowest part of these wetlands, which would tend to displace stormwater storage or minimize the ability of the wetlands to detain and transform nutrients or to detain sediments. The third function, or the third condition that the Wetlands Conservation District tests require, is that the proposed activity minimizes environmental impacts to abutting and downstream properties or hydrologically connected waters and wetland resources. And we accomplish that through the oversizing of culverts that promote the continued current flows of water through the area, rather than constricting them and creating situations where potential for erosion events, sedimentation might occur that could affect abutters. The driveway also goes through a pretty well vegetated part of the site, so that our driveway is not going to be readily visible to abutting property owners. And overall, we are mitigating or avoiding any alteration that would impact abutting property owners or downstream resources. The fourth test is that the proposed activity or use cannot practically be located otherwise on the site to eliminate or reduce the impact to the wetland resources. And that we've pretty well covered between Pat and John Roke's discussions of why the frontage area is essentially unbuildable, and that the best location for this development of a single family house is where proposed, out in the largest area of upland soils on the site. So with that covered, I think we go back to Pat to continue the presentation.
Okay. E was the proposed activity or use cannot practically be located otherwise on the site to eliminate or reduce the impact to the wetland buffer. If you look at the plans that show the buffer and the wetland, you can see that as the driveway progresses through the site, there really is no upland other than the buffer itself to pass through until you reach the buildable land located to the north, because the striping is actually the wetland itself, or the gray and the pink are the buffer. So from a practical viewpoint, there really is no other way or other location where it could be placed other than in the buffer, which is an upland location. F is the federal or state permits have been received for the proposed activity in accordance with New Hampshire administrative rules. ENV WT 100 through 900, and the federal section 404 permit. There are no federal permits required for this minor wetland project that the 3 culverts were characterized, because it is just a residential driveway, but we do have the wetland permit from the state that was issued in December of 2024. G, where applicable, proof of compliance with all other state or federal regulations has been received. There are no other state or federal permits required. This is a single-family residential home, and it's a residential driveway, so just local permits are required. Now, there's also some questions under Article 12.05. The planning board shall issue a conditional permit if it finds the following. The use is specifically authorized by Article 5, Section 5.11, Table of Uses Regulations as a conditional use. Actually, a single-family home is expressly permitted in the rural district, and a wetland, a conditional use permit, or the Wetland Conservation District allows a driveway subject to this board's review and granting of a conditional use permit. So again, once it's a permitted use, subject to your oversight. If completed as proposed by the applicant, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of this article and the specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for this particular use. Except for this conditional use permit, this proposed single-family home will fully comply with zoning, meet all setbacks, and follow all the rules and regulations in the town of Bow. And there is no other relief required. C, the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety. By definition, a permitted use would not endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. The proposed driveway design, which does impact wetlands and its buffer, has been appropriately permitted, appropriately designed, and thought through at a very high level to minimize any adverse impacts to the environment. And the house is set back quite a distance from the road. They may not even know it's in there, so I don't think there'll be any harm to public health, safety, or welfare. The use will be compatible with the neighborhood and with the adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is to be located. This is a residential neighborhood. There are single-family homes located on all of the abutting lots, and it will fit in nicely amongst all of them. And I think that was it.
All right.
Oh, the utilities. The utilities are available.
I'll make a motion to accept the application as complete.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we get a, I don't know whether a copy of the functional assessment was submitted.
It was with the wetland permit application that you've got a copy of.
But our zoning requires the
That can be submitted,
functional
yes.
assessment, so it should.
Narrative. If anything becomes from this narrative.
I'd rather have the full functional
The
assessment.
sheets, right, yeah, thank you.
The area out front that's not suitable, what's the square footage of that area that would actually be any, like, how much?
I
how
don't
big
have
is
an
it?
exact square footage.
13,000.
Could you actually just
Yeah,
give
here.
your name?
Oh, I'm Eli Lerman. I'm one of the applicants.
Yeah, we just want name for record.
Yeah, it's about 13,000 square feet. What ends up happening if you basically you end up with the road, the front setback from the road.
Yep.
That cuts 30 feet into the front. You end up with this is the highest functioning wetland in the site, so you have a 75-foot buffer. against it, and there's actually, see it on this, but.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it ends up squeezing it from every single direction, from the front, from both sides, or from both sides and the rear. It squeezes it down to a triangle.
Would you agree, like it's 13,000, that sounds about right?
Is it 13,000 with the squeezing that you mentioned, or is it the entire upland area?
Is the entire upland area 13,000, or is it the whatever's left of the area that's outside of a setback? The entire area.
So it's less in terms
You would,
of being
if you take out all the setbacks, you're probably at like 4,000 square feet of area.
That's not much space.
So if you think of the house, you have to add a house, a septic, a driveway, a well. You have to get all those things to fit. Normally you end up with maybe 1.5 acres of area that you disturb for just a regular single family house. Trying to force a house into that area with ledge right on the road, it's not a good place to put it.
Do you have the notes as to why that condition was made by the planning board back in 2006? Like, what was the decision to say, okay, you can do all this, but only if you build right here?
Do you have any of that research?
I think, yes, I did review the minutes. And when I went through them, there were several meetings. And from what I could glean, there was because the home that was being proposed, my best guess, okay, it was somewhere over in this area near the pond. The abutters did not want a home over there that close to the pond. One had an issue with a view. The other, it was very close to the pond also. And there's also an easement in that area, a right-of-way that you can see referenced right next to that. It's on the 2006 plan. It says here, the perpetual 15-foot wide right-of-way easement over the lot 30H to 30G. That was going through that area also. So there was a great deal of abutter opposition. I wondered that question also. And what we also know too is that there was a wetland scientist who was present for many of the hearings, but I don't know, we didn't see any kind of reference to an engineer or a lot designer like John does to kind of say, okay, what can we fit where and what is practical and what is not. So to the best of my knowledge, that's all I could tell.
Anybody on the board? Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna open this to the public. If just state your name and.
Yeah, Sean Ray, 101 Woodhill Road. I'm an abutter. I was at the 2005 presentation where the modification for the 1978 plan, which got pushed back and then is where the two sites are today. There's actually a foundation in there, an old farmhouse foundation that's in that area. It's on our town map. All I asked for at the meeting, I had actually submitted in 2005 these 2 pages of the issues back there, including the drainage requirements for that area where we lost South Bow Road because we had a culvert gap right there. The water fills that whole area, went over the road and took South Bow Road out, if anybody remembers. It was about 15 years ago. I know there were other abutters at the time. I'm the only one left out of the 5 that live there. Almost everyone is new, has moved in there recently. I like the little path of the bicycle bridge for the guy across the street who uses that land. But in all reality, we requested, based on the map was drawn and was reviewed in middle of winter and in the late August when it's the driest. So since the application originally was in April, we asked for a walk. So the town, we took a walk, and where the house was going to be was in 7 inches of water, and where that bridge is right there was in 14 inches of water. And what
So where is?
right in the middle of where the driveway is going to be in March and April, when the thaw happens, we actually take all the drain off of all of the area around us. There are 4 streams that feed into the pond and also come in on the backside. And so during the wettest time of the year, that place is really, this driveway that they're proposing, unless they make it 24 inches high, they will have to drive through water. Unless they put other drainage systems in, which is not possible because what you're talking about, that is a marsh that you go through right there. It's not like a stream that you can just put a bridge over. It's part of the, not only is the map, when we first saw the maps, we were like, hey, these two have to grow together. The map shows 2 wetlands. It shows a boundary and then there's a gap in the middle and there is a little high there. That's why that path was put there by the next door neighbor, right? There's all sorts of people. If you look at the All Trails map, you can see that trail that's back there. But if you try to go in there in March, or we have any issues with the pond, that whole area there, unless it's raised significantly, is water. Those 2 sides become one. And I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. All I wanted to do was say, hey, in my original request was, everybody kept saying.
The original request was in the 2005.
This is a 2005 paper that then we did the site walk, but we did the site walk when it was wet. If you go there now, the ground's hard as rock, it's frozen. You can't tell where water is and where bedrock is. But you go in there in March, if we've had any snow, and there's a mini pond right there. So we were worried, at the time, Marcia Brown owns the corner, which the town has to do quite a bit of work every year. Right on the corner of where Southbow Road and 101 come in, there's a culvert there that goes under. And then there's the culvert that takes the stream, which is the drain from the whole entire region out of the pond and this wetland and takes it under the road right next to that other house. So when we did the walk, we asked, where would you put a driveway? And at the end of the walk, I suspect there's minutes from that 2005 meeting, but basically that's what this second one here was. You can still build on the site. You can build on the original 2 from the 1978 plot plan, but you can't go beyond right here due to the wetlands boundary and the wetlands buffer.
Okay. Anybody else in the public that?
I live at 103 Wood Hill Road. I believe I'm lot 30G. Stephen Jeffers recently bought the property from the last owner. I share my neighbor's concerns. Also, I've heard setbacks are 75 feet. If I go by the scale of the map that was given to me, then parts of the driveway and the building come within that.
Yeah, that's what they're asking for is permission to go into that.
Oh, missed that.
There are the 2 zones they talk, but those connect into one water area. You would have to raise that from the first one to the second one to get over water, or you would have to put drainage in, which is hard because it's a marsh. That's what we found during the walk, was when you walk in there, it's not like it's a stream you could divert it or move it or whatever. The whole thing is a big, huge marsh. The little mini pond that was referenced in the beginning that was in the corner, as you know, the life cycle of a pond, especially a beaver pond, starts with a nice 6-7 foot deep pond, but it fills up with silt over time. And what happened to Marcia Brown's property on the corner, she was there for 30 years before she passed away. And that is just a big, huge swamp now. It doesn't have the same sort of capacity for flooding. And the same is true with the bigger pond. The bigger pond, when I moved in, was 8.5 feet deep, 10 feet off of my house, because that used to be the irrigation for my house. Now it's 2.5 feet. It's almost completely filled with silt. The beaver has taken action to actually raise the dam, and so the water table has increased by 3 feet in that area in the last year. The previous owner in that area, on the other side of this, and this is why a site walk is very important, is that the abutting property right there on Southbow Road, where we have the town has the big culvert that takes the drainage through the bottom there. You sort of need to put that in context with what this driveway is going to do. This driveway, even if raised a foot, the culverts will provide drainage, but there'll be a lot of areas along that driveway that water will still be caught. And that's all I'd say. We asked why we couldn't, where they put the property this time is up in the middle, very nice. It's very flat up there. A lot of people from Tower Hill hike down there. And so if there's an opportunity where it's much drier, there's no real wetlands up there to come from Tower Hill to the same property, that would be way better than digging this up.
Yeah, it's tough to put driveways over other people's property. Anybody else from the public?
Alan Donovan, 20 Southville Road. We have 3 recommendations for the board prior to making your decision at whichever next point it will be. The first, on the last site walk, the current location of the driveway was not staked. The previous design was. And so we haven't.
When was the last site walk? What do you?
The last site walk was for the
wetlands permit in the fall.
So I would recommend that the board request that the new driveway be fully staked so that you can see it clearly. Second recommendation is that this is called Lot 30I for a reason. The lawyer referred to the subdivision decision most recently documented. But 30I, as we know, indicates there was a whole series of subdivision decisions made, and I think it would be best for the lawyer to describe those various other subdivisions that were made and the ordinances that were in place at that time that governed it. And then the third and final recommendation would be that Tom's original wetlands application to DES listed this as a major impact. He just described it as a minor impact. And I'm sure Tom's a very good wetland scientist expert. We would just like to know, not tonight, obviously, a little bit about how that transitioned from major to minor. I'm sure he can explain that to us in good detail, to you in good detail. Thank you.
I can if you wanted to take that out of order here.
Yeah, if you were here, so.
Originally, we classified it as a minimum impact project because the total wetland impact was under 3,000 square feet. And that falls into the category of minimum impact project. However, the determination by the Natural Heritage Bureau that Blanding's turtle, a rare species, actually an endangered species at the state level, was found within a mile of the site, automatically elevates the project to a major impact. So technically it's a major impact project, but only because there's a rare turtle that's known to have existed at some point in the past 20 plus years within a mile of the site.
So that's how it got to a major. How did it get back down to a minor then?
It isn't a minor. It's basically minor, minimal project descriptions as an attorney, but lay in terms of a wetland science, described it as a small wetland impact.
I just relied on the rules that say driveways are minor. And
Yeah.
I guess that got elevated.
When you
I'm
get
sta-
to the point of a wetland permit application and you get into the larger amounts of wetland impacts, it normally is required to be 10,000 square feet to be a major impact project, but it can be any amount of wetland impact. As long as you have a rare species nearby, it's automatically elevated to a major impact.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I could answer one question from the prior one where we're talking about how to build the driveway. What we have is a wetland dredge and fill permit. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to dredge across there to the underlying soil and build up the driveway from there. So it's good. The driveway is going to sit on solid soil when we start building it up and compacting it. The culverts are oversized to pass the flows through basically unimpeded. There's 2 spots where it concentrates, and we have oversized culverts at both of those spots. So even if there's a lot of water coming through there to hit either of those spots, everything is designed to basically flow right through the driveway. And the the surface of the driveway is going to be, I think, 3 or 4 feet higher than the existing grade right in that spot as we go down and across it.
We're still in a public hearing. Anybody else got?
I think I had heard somewhere up here about.
Could you
Oh, yeah.
say your name and?
New Exum 97 Brown Hill Road.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last name
Exum, EXUM,
and the address again. I'm sorry.
97 Brown Hill Road. I thought I heard saying about crossing somebody else's property, but Eli, have you thought to talk to the guy at the top of the hill?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That's the right away.
I got you. Even if you were exchanging some land there and working it out so you could subdivide some for him. I mean, I'm just making, some suggestions. And I realize the panel up here is not part of, being part of that process, but certainly it seems like up there would be way better to build.
So anyways, your comment would, there's some better land places, and has he talked to?
Yeah.
And you have talked to other neighbors to look for a different access and?
I have,
without
our real estate agent spoke to the 2 adjacent neighbors. There's emails in the narrative. We asked if they would allow us a right of way through their property to avoid all these wetlands, and they both said, no, thank you.
Okay. Good talk. Anybody else? Don't see any. I'm gonna close the public hearing.
I mean, I think it's obvious from where I stand, like a lot of this discussion, we need context with the sidewalk. Before we can even get into many of the things. It's a complex crossing, and so.
Yes.
We can make a motion that does not have a regional impact, though.
Yes, I would. Okay. All those in favor of not being regional impact?
All right.
Aye.
We want to schedule a site walk?
Yeah.
We do it back to back with the other one. Does that make sense? Just do a tour of both.
We could, although, it's really kind of hard to figure out how long.
I think that's
They're
gonna,
both kind of big.
I think that's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do whatever.
No,
Don't base it off of my schedule,
is-
but I wouldn't be able to do both.
We want to do it on the 15th at the same time, maybe the 8th with the original one.
Would you be able to have the driveway
Staked.
staked?
The driveway is staked and has been staked
Okay.
this entire time since last year.
No, it wasn't completely staked when we were out there for the wetland permit sidewalk.
It's staked now,
This morning.
right?
Okay. So the 15th at 10:30, does that work?
Or do you want to do noon? Or do you have a game?
Like I said, no.
You have a game that day?
That day I'm
Or
open.
should we do 12:30 so
Let's,
that's
yeah, let's do
Yeah.
12:30 on the 15th. Okay.
Yes.
Important detail. And then we will continue it till then. I'll make a motion to continue application 503-24 and does anyone have the other one?
503.
513, sorry, 413-24 to the February 20th meeting.
Who's the second?
No, yet.
I'll say it.
Oh, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
One thing that I wanted to ask is, I know that there was a plan with the wetland buffer shown, but it doesn't show the impact area to the buffers. So it's just like, because I know there was some mention, originally the application said 864 feet impact to buffers. And then it's sort of at 11,000, but I'm not sure where it's not clearly marked on any map that I've seen or anything.
Page 3 of the plan shows the driveway in land view. Page 1 of the bottom, in the middle.
Right, yeah, it doesn't mention it does show the extent.
That's the impact to the buffer.
Right, it doesn't show the numbers.
Numbers are on the first page, bottom kind of in the middle. 3,000 something to the poorly drained soil and 8,000 something to the very poorly drained soil.
Right, it doesn't say buffer impacts.
Those are the buffer impacts. It says
This
very
says
poorly.
poorly drained area impacts.
So is that is,
So
That is the buffer.
so you're saying
Oh,
it's
so
not
that's
much.
buffers to those. Okay, so these are buffers. Okay, it's not labeled.
Get that more clear on that picture for you.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah, I was.
Yes, we have continued it.
Okay, can you continue both of them?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
20th. Maybe do that, thank you, Holly.
May I have that? I need that for my phone.
But not that soon.
So-
Yeah, back. I know there's a lot of water.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, minutes?
Or Eli.
So, yeah. I expected more.
Hearing date. Would we continue hearing this? We got the sidewalk
February
date.
20th.
20th.
Yeah, they did.
It's the 20th. Okay,
Yep, it did.
okay.
Minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think right around here. That's-
Change it all south.
Before we do the minutes,
There's two December.
there's
Oh, you're
other
right.
people here, like, they're here for something else.
The January one.
Yeah, we'll let this. Was there anybody here that was for something else before we get into our approving minutes?
All the things in May.
Yes.
Whether or not there are a copy of this, or it still should be on record.
You know, to leave a copy with Andrew would be great.
Yes,
That
that'd be
would-
great.
Thank
And I bet you we'll end up with more copies of that in next month's packet.
Realize we had color copies of these things the whole time. I was looking at the black and whites the whole time and just realized these were black.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you buy the
Um,
Sullivan's?
Yeah. Ginger?
Pardon me.
We're gonna do the minutes.
In that wall?
Sorry.
Yeah, well,
I'm there, kind of, but not,
I can also give you my copy after I.
okay.
Power line.
Let's say, line 33, yep, after it says southeast corner of the property, rather than say no longer, it says does not meet. So take out the S and say does not rather than no longer. Line 35, the sizes of the wetland buffers. And so take off the S on wetland and add the word buffers. And then at the end of that line, it was found to be less than a quarter acre in area. Make it more. Next page. 57, only remaining wetland buffer impacts are in there, and I would say the northwest portion of the site.
Well, instead of top left.
Instead of top left, yeah.
Wait, should we, that be more clear if it was a, like, northwest, like what's top left portion?
That's why I said northwest.
Oh, that's what you said.
That's what I
I'm
said.
sorry.
We're in the same frame of mind. And then the paragraph with 60 through 63, it actually had been described earlier by Amy Sanders. So I thought it might be good for line 60 to say, as Ms. Sanders had noted, comma, Mr. Hurley explained that the data plots he completed rather than conducted. And then it's wet area observed. I think it was only the one wet area. Line 92, you're on some extra words. So we must question to what extent the use can be accommodated. So take out the use. In one,
Extent the use.
to what extent the use can be accommodated.
Okay, got it.
That's it on that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 19th, 2024 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then I have no suggested changes for January 2nd.
New Year miracle.
It's always zoning ordinances.
Yeah, it was the easiest one in the books.
That were explained very clearly by Carrie.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 2nd, 2025.
All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Well, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.